Welcome to Lawn and Garden Month on Echo Means Business. This month on EMB, we're doing a series of free webinars with leading brands and industry experts. For all session info, you guys can visit echomeansbusiness.com. If you don't know me, I'm Craig Williford with Clean Cut Yards. We're based out of Sherman, Texas. I'm a UAG member, as well as Abigail and Jacqueline with Jar Landscaping, who are joining us today. Abigail, Jacqueline, you guys say hi.
Hey everyone, I'm Abigail, and I am Jacqueline with Jar Landscaping LLC here in Central Illinois. In this session, we'll be discussing selecting the right hand tools, care, and maintenance with Chris from Corona Tools. Hi, Chris.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I am glad to be here. I'm doing well and ready to talk tools here today.
We are too. Whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation.
All right, let's see if this works. So we're going to share screen here. And if I've done my job correctly, this will actually work. So let's see. You're probably looking at your presentation. How about now? Can you see the presentation?
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much to Echo Means Business for putting this all together and for allowing us to jump on and share this topic about proper tool selection, care, and maintenance. One of the things that we did want to just housekeeping notes as we get started here. If you have questions along the way, feel free to ask anytime along the way during the presentation. You can wait till the end, but certainly as the question comes up, go ahead and start sharing. The first thing I wanted to do is talk about hand tools of the trade. Now, this is all kind of non-powered stuff that, and some of this sounds, just basic information, but here's the thing that I want to share with you is that a lot of people will use one tool for multiple jobs. So I just wanted to go through, talk about some of the main tools that people use for the specific tasks in landscape maintenance. Things like tree care. So obviously things like a bypass pruner, a bypass lopper, a handsaw, and a pole pruner are all things that you're going to use to take care of trees. Hedges, you're going to use head shears, bypass pruners, and sometimes even loppers, depending on how large the branches are. Vines, you're going to use bypass pruners and bypass loppers. And lawn and garden, boy, there's just a slew of tools that you need for that. A lot of you are doing lawn care and maintenance, so rakes and edging, root irrigation, aerating, sod plugging, and reseeding. Things like hori knives are great for slicing through sod and getting those installed, as well as just precision cutting tools. And when it comes to weeding, the hand weeders, a hoe, and a cultivator are all important to be using. Digging, you're going to need things like trenching, planting, irrigation, shovels, those kinds of things. And then hauling, you're going to need a nice wheelbarrow to help get that landscape materials right where you need it at the job site. So here's one that I don't think a lot of folks actually think about when they're out selecting their tools and you walk into a landscape supply store, you see a bunch of shovels on the wall, and you know that you need to get one for, that's going to be heavy duty because you're going to be doing some heavy duty digging. This is one thing I want you to take a look at is understanding the metal gauge on a shovel. They will all have it. It's anywhere, it's the metal gauges are generally between 16 to 12. And the thing to keep in mind, the higher the number, the thinner the metal. So something like a 16 gauge shovel is really thin and it's meant for loose soil. And when you come across a rock or a root and you continue to pry, because we all do it, we just we we want to get finished on the job and move along, and we're just going to continue to pry that. Well, with a 16 gauge shovel, you are more likely to bend that metal, and it's going to cause you, you know, grief. You're going to have to run back to the truck, find another shovel. So just make sure that you're using the right one for the job. Now, a 15 gauge shovel will work moderately with moderately compacted soil, and it can withstand some prying. And then a 14 gauge is more your professional grade. So this is what's going to be ideal for digging in hard soils and compact soils. If you come across that rock or the root and you start to pry, it's definitely going to withstand that. Now, if you want no, you know, questions asked, the 12 gauge is the thickest, heaviest duty grade. And boy, I'll tell you what, you come across rocks or roots and you start prying, I assure you that shovel is going to, excuse me, is going to stand up to that and you'll be able to get through that job. So Really understanding the different types of metal that you're working with here is going to save you a lot of time when you're on the job. One of the other things that I wanted to mention when it comes to shovels in particular, there's a closed back and an open back. And what that means, I don't know if you can see this shovel here. This is the second one down in the on the graphic here. So actually no, I'm sorry, the third one down. It is completely filled in with metal on the back side. So where the pole is actually meeting the shovel head, that area is closed over. And when you are working in things like, heavy clays and those types of things, that will tend to get packed into that back of the shovel. So with a closed back shovel, it's got a nice piece of metal that's welded on there and it will prevent that hole from being filled up with dirt and soil, which means it's going to be easier to lift and to move as opposed to getting compacted in there. And another thing, it makes cleaning up so much easier. Another thing that I want to cover is the handle types. Now, when we're looking at shovels here, you go into the store, you see everything from metal to fiberglass to wood handles, and there's different types of handles like the D handle versus the long handle. And I wanted to cover some of the what's important about each one of those. So with a steel handle, we talked about that metal head, that 12 gauge metal head. That's the tool that you're going to be able to use for prying and digging. That's basically like a metal pry bar that is going to just last you forever and be able to, get everything done that you need to get done. Keeping in mind that is a heavier shovel. So a particular shovel that Corona makes is about an 8-pound shovel, which sounds pretty heavy when you're, taking that out to the job site and using it. But something you have to keep in mind is because of the weight of that shovel, because of the thickness of that shovel, it's actually going to do a lot of the digging work for you. So you're not having to push as hard into the soil, and it is more likely to be able to pierce that soil because of the weight of it. So there's different things that you have to consider when you're looking at the shovels. Things like solid core fiberglass. So that is a plastic handle that has the fiberglass that runs all throughout the handle. And that is your next strongest handle type. And that will definitely last you if you're doing things like, the heavy duty digging. And it's going to be a little more flexible than the steel one. And obviously the weight is not there. Not necessarily as durable because I assure you, if you leave that tool out in the sun, UV can definitely damage those tools over time, and that will cause the fiberglass and the plastic handle to get brittle and break. Wood is a viable option that most landscape contractors actually use, and it's a great option. They are solid, they are sturdy. Also depends on the type of wood. If you're using something like ash, look at the handle. Is it an ash type handle? Is it giving you, good solid strength? And I will tell you that it's the most likely to break at the head where the handle joins the shovel head. And that's when you're doing that heavy duty prying and digging. If you're really, continue to pull and push, obviously that's going to snap. Now there are things like hollow core fiberglass. So that's just basically that fiberglass handle. There's nothing inside of it. So that is really more your DIY type shovel. And you want to make sure that you can use that shovel for your day-to-day jobs if you're working with really loose soil and it's not causing a lot of impact on the shovel. Things now, the other thing to think about is the type of handle in terms of, is it a long handle and is it a D handle? You see on this graphic here, these are all D handles, and it's got that, it's a shorter handle and it's got that little D on the backside. What that is ideal for is if you're working in tight spaces, but then also when you're moving materials that you just dug out, being able to grasp that D handle and then flipping the soil over or landscape materials, it makes it so much easier. It gives you a lot of leverage. So it just depends on what your conditions are as to which one you need. I like both, to have both, because if you're out on a job site, you never know which one you're going to need. So I like to have one of each of those. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about selecting the right pruning tool. This is something that I think a lot of people don't really consider when they're out buying a tool. Oftentimes, especially with like a pruning tool, for example, they will walk into a landscape supply store. They'll say, "Oh, yeah, I generally am cutting like a 1-inch limb, so I want the larger cutting capacity." But what they're not taking into account is the size of their hand. If you use a tool that is larger than your hand size can take, it's going to take a lot of extra work on your hand. And at the end of the day, your hand is going to be killing you. So you want to make sure that if you see the graphic on the screen, so you see if you've got a small hand, just measure your hand from the bottom of your palm to the tip of your finger and then across your palm to understand the size of your hand. And you can see in the graphic that that's the size pruner that you should actually be selecting. That's going to work best for you. Your hand is not going to be killing you. And if you come across a larger branch, then there's things that you should you should look at things like using either a lopper or a saw, because that's just going to make everything so much easier. I also wanted to cover a bypass versus an anvil, and I think what I'm going to do is stop sharing for a second here, and I've got some show and tell that I'm going to do. See if I can get back over here. All right. So the difference between an anvil and a bypass. A lot of people don't really consider this when they are out pruning, and there's a big difference as to which tool you use at which time. A bypass pruner is ideal for using on green, fresh stems versus a anvil type pruner is best for deadwood. And I'm going to show you what the difference is. So hopefully you can see this. I brought my handy dandy pencil and a bypass pruner. So if you can see this, yeah, if you were to try and make a cut on a piece of hard dead wood, what's going to happen is this blade is going to actually cross over and it's going to just leave that a gap in that tool, and it's not going to make that cut because that wood is so hard. So you want to use something like this anvil pruner, which, if you can see, this actually comes down and it's a solid blade that comes across an anvil. That is what you need for dead wood. If you try to use a bypass pruner on dead wood, you could damage the tool, it could snap, and you certainly don't want that. So using the right tool for the job is always important. And conversely, if you use an anvil pruner on fresh green stems, you have the likelihood this blade is coming down on this top of this anvil and it can crush these green stems, which will leave that plant open to diseases and pests, and you don't want that. So making sure that you use the right tool for, and make sure you close it, tool safety. Making sure that you use the right tool for the job is always very important. So let's go back to sharing this presentation here. All right. So wanted to also cover that, as I had mentioned before, if the tool that you're using is not, if it's too big for your hand and you can't make that cut, here's a general guide to keep in mind. So a hand pruner will cut up to 1-inch limbs. Use a lopper for anything that's 1 to 2 inches in diameter. And then anything that's over 2 inches in diameter, whether that's fresh or deadwood, use a saw. A folding saw is ideal to do all of that, and it will cut through these, the larger limbs with just in seconds. So it's definitely worth figuring out which is the right tool, and that will save both your tool as well as your hand. All right, so let's get into proper tool care. Reasons for proper tool care is that it's going to extend the life of your tool. It's also going to help maintain maximum performance. And by that, I mean, if you're using a tool like your pruning tools and you get sap and debris that build up on your tool, it's eventually going to get sticky and it's going to be hard to make the cuts, and it's just not going to cut as well as, and you also need to make sure that you're keeping it sharp. The sharper the tool, it's going to make cuts easier, and that's something that's going to help you get your job done quicker. Another quick demo that I'm going to show you here. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. And if this gets annoying, you just tell me and I won't do the show and tell anymore here. But I think this is important because a lot of people, when it comes to sharpening their tools, don't really understand how important that is or just how to do it. So I have this quick this is a little sharpening tool that Corona has, and it is so easy. It's a little carbide file. You can see this little edge right here. All you do is hold that up to the blade at a 45-degree angle, and you make 5 passes on the cutting side. This is the cutting side of the blade. This is the non-cutting side. So you just hold it securely in your hand, make 5 passes on the cutting side, and then you make one on the back to remove any of the burrs, and that's it. You can do that as often as you need to. So if you're out on the job site, you keep this handy and you feel like the tool is not cutting as well as it should, just go ahead and sharpen that real quick. Now, if you are using an anvil, it's the same principle. However, this blade is sharpened on both sides. So you would just make 5 passes on the anvil side or on the cutting side, and then 5 passes on the other side, and you are good to go. So very important tool to have with you at all times. So whenever, and that will work on loppers as well as any of your digging tools that have a straight edge or a sharpened edge to help pierce the soil. All right, so we're going to go back to this presentation here. And again, if you guys have any questions along the way, please feel free to jump in and ask those now. Okay, and it's very important to clean your tools after every use. I know we're all in a hurry and we don't really take the time to clean tools. I am guilty of that as the next person, but having clean tools is going to help extend the life of that. It's going to help prevent rust. It's going to help the performance, like we said, with cutting tools so that they're not sticky and gummed up. And you definitely want to do that. You want to store them in a dry, protected location. We talked, if you leave your tools out in the sun, that sun will cause damage to your tools. It'll, dry out your wood. That will crack fiberglass. I mean, just all of those things. So you want to keep those well protected, and then don't forget to check those annually. So if you're, starting to head out in the early spring or even late in the winter when you're putting your tools up and you're not going to be using them, it's a really good time to check to see what's the handle condition like. Is there anything that's falling off? Are you missing parts on your pruner, like a spring or something like that? It's an ideal time to do that annual check, make sure that you get any replacement parts that you need, and then that way, by the time you're ready to go out in the spring, your tools are ready to go. And wanted to talk about proper tool cleaning method. So one of the things that you should do is, we talked about cleaning your tools after every use, is disinfecting your tools. This is a conversation that I had. I was out at the National Landscape Competitions last week, had a great chat with a gentleman from Husqvarna, and we were talking about their robot powered mowers. And he was saying that when a landscape contractor who's, working with lawn care maintenance goes from one site to the other and they don't clean the blades of and the underside of the mower, that if you've just cut lawn at a location that has this easy to spread weed, whatever that is, I honestly don't remember what the weed was, but just said that you can transfer that over to another property as you're cutting it. Same principle when you're working with these types of tools, pruning tools. You want to make sure that you are disinfecting them every time. And the easiest way to do that, it's not as difficult as I would imagine that you would take to clean a mower, but it's all you need to do is take an alcohol wipe and just wipe down all the metal parts of the blade. And that you should do every time in between jobs, especially if you're doing a site that has multiple plants. One could have a disease and you could transfer that if you're not cleaning them. So do take the time to clean it. And the thing I like about the alcohol wipes, you've seen those little packets that you get in like a first aid kit. It's, if you wipe it down, it's going to dry completely and it's going to disinfect it. There are other methods. People have used bleach and those types of things before. Those will definitely work. However, they do leave water and they also can leave a residue on the metal. Bleach is a corrosive chemical, and it will actually break down the metal over time. So something like a alcohol wipe will definitely work best for you. Let's see. Also, removing rust. So one of the big, I think, things that a lot of people do, we've seen it both on gardeners, professional landscapers, is when they remove rust, they're using steel wool. The thing I want to caution you on steel wool is that it actually introduces little metal burrs into the metal as you're cleaning your tools, and those are so prone to rust, and that's going to cause more problems for you down the road. It's better to use something like a stiff wire brush that'll help get all of that caked off debris, and then just put a nice coat of like 3-in-1 oil or WD-40 or something like that. And that is not only a great way to store your tools when you put them up, but it's also going to help you keep the tools clean because the debris is going to wipe off the next time you use it. So take the time to definitely do that. proper storing. So you definitely want to leave your tools hang your tools in a secure and dry location. Don't want to leave tools, we've all seen the comedy sketches where somebody steps on a rake and gets, clubbed in the face. Make sure that you're hanging up your tools properly so that they're not going to cause any injury. Talked a little bit about protecting your tools from the sun and UV light. That's going to shorten the life of your tools. And then dealing with temperature swings. So if you're in an area that tends to get very cold at night and warms up during the day, that can actually cause condensation on your metal tools. So do something like wrapping it in a soft cloth. And this is really in the more the winter days when it's definitely much colder, and that'll help protect that tool from the condensation. That condensation will go onto the cloth as opposed to staying on the metal, which will, when you open that up in the spring to go out and use it, you'll see that it's covered in rust. So definitely don't want to do that. And then also apply varnish or linseed oil on the wood. So if you've got wood handles, just check before you put your tools up, put a nice coat of varnish or linseed oil, and that will help keep those nice and looking good. And next, I wanted to talk a little bit about warranty. When you're going in to purchase a tool, take the time, look for the warranty, and buy the best possible tool that you can afford, because it definitely will be worth it. There's a limited lifetime warranty, and then there's a limited warranty. And I wanted to explain a little bit about the difference. One thing to keep in mind, all tools have an end of life and they will wear out. If you are a professional and you're out making thousands of cuts, it's going to eventually wear out versus a homeowner who's probably making 1 or 2 cuts per year. That tool is probably going to last them a lot longer for their lifetime. So you have to think about it in terms of how long is that tool actually going to last. Everything will eventually wear out at some point, but you want to make sure that you're using the tool as it was intended. If you're using it for something else, then there's a good chance that if have an issue, they might not cover the warranty. And think about it in terms of the lifetime warranty is going to cover anything that is with material defects. If you're out using your tool and it happens to break and it's because there's something wrong with the metal, they're going to take care of that. And a limited warranty often means it's got a shorter window. So a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, take a look at that. And when it comes to warranty, if it is a limited warranty, just realize that it's probably not a professional grade tool, that it will wear out and it's going to wear out faster, but it's also got a lower price point. So if you're okay with replacing your tools more often, then a limited warranty could definitely work for you. The other thing is they will void the warranty if you've made any modifications or misuse. So make sure that you're using the tool as suggested and you're not misusing it and doing things like digging with your hand pruners or something like that. Believe me, we've seen them all. So I did want to take a few minutes to talk about one thing when it comes to the green industry resources. As I mentioned, I was at the National Collegiate Landscape Competitions, and we talked about how this industry always wants to engage with landscape contractors, and we are there as a network to help support those who are out there. So do reach out to organizations. I know that National Association of Landscape Professionals had a session on this Echo Means Business webinar series. There's also the Tree Care Industry Association. They are there to help. There's Garden Communicators International, which is gardencom.org. They are a network of trained horticulturists. So if you're doing things like developing content for your website or need pictures taken for your website, they are there to help. They know how that works. I also encourage you to join professional communities, just like Echo Means Business, forums and networking. So you can always connect with those who are in the industry and can help. And then, of course, another great resource is Corona's free Principles of Planting and Pruning guides that are available on our website in the resources section. Lastly, I invite you to engage with us. You can find us on all the social channels. We have a weekly podcast, In Case You Missed It, where we talk about things that are going on in the green industry that might affect you. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. And with that, I would like to say thank you so much to Echo Means Business and all the partners who participated in this webinar series. Whew, all right. I got 2 minutes left for questions or 5 minutes left for questions.
Chris, that was awesome. Thanks so much. I was going to say I'm doing a series for Echo Means Business on pruning, and before I decided to do that, I actually took a college course on the basics of pruning, just to sort of get some ideas of where I wanted to head with this video series. And it cost a bit of money to do the college course, and then once I was done with it, I actually got on y'all's website, coronatools.com, and saw that you guys actually had all that information in there. I wouldn't even needed to take the college course. You guys got some great information there. You can jump on coronatools.com, go to their resource center, and they've got lots of info on pruning. They've got a topic, topping is for ice cream, not trees. And I think that'd be a
Excellent.
good one for a lot of landscapers out there, because I've seen a lot of topping.
Well, and that's a great point. I would definitely look at those resources. And TCIA, which is Tree Care Industry Association, is fantastic for that and really explaining why topping is just not great for trees and how it can shorten the life. And it causes the tree to grow in ways that it's just not intended. So definitely look into that. Those are all great resources. All right. Well, again, thank you guys so much. It's been great to be on this webinar series with you all, as well as this whole series through with Echo Means Business. I'm thrilled that we could be part of it, and glad that we get a chance to reach out to some of the UAG members. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for the presentation, Chris, and thanks everyone for joining us. Don't forget to follow Echo Means Business on Instagram and Facebook, and then also be sure to check back on echomeansbusiness.com